So I thought I'd do a short video on epoxy tips and tricks and things I've learned over the years that might be helpful. It seems like a lot of people who are watching this have not really messed around with epoxy or done any of this sort of thing, but they're thinking about it. And so I thought I'd do that. And just before I went into that, I thought I'd just show you this. This is a 30-foot sloop that I built back in the 80s. So this is the third boat that I built. It's a picture of my wife and I on the boat in Norwalk just prior to launching it. There's another picture just prior to launching. So I built the boat in Greenwich, in Coscob, about the same time as the Annis River Bridge collapsed, because I was building it pretty close to underneath the bridge. So this is a photo here of the boat going from Greenwich up to Easton, because my parents moved to Easton, as most or frequently young people do. I was living in my parents' house while I was working on the project, so I'd gotten it that far along. Moved it up to Easton, and then in the yard in Easton, that's the process of flipping the boat over, which took a day. A bunch of old mattresses and tires and come-alongs and jacks and things like that, and a bunch of just go for it kind of thing. You can see a lot of the Akume plywood all in here, and the frames and things are made of Philippine mahogany, and then it's all cold molded, so there are 4 layers of Western red cedar veneer on the outside of the boat. Then after, also covered with fiberglass below the waterline. So that was in the 1980s, and built a few boats since then, designed a few. This particular one was an Alan Warwick design. It's a Stratus 927. It's a really nice boat. And I did not build it the way Alan Warwick designed it to be built. I modified a ton of stuff, made it much stronger and probably lighter. The boat is still sailing around. It's in here in Connecticut. Still, a guy I sold it to still has it after 35 years or so. So it's one of the great things about cold molding and working with wood and epoxy is that the boats just last phenomenally long time, and they're super strong. The whole thing becomes this, one structure. There's, you're not reliant on fasteners and caulking and, things like that. So if you want to build something that's going to last generations with little or no maintenance, other than, some paint and varnish and stuff like that, this is definitely the way to go. So I would also highly recommend reading the Goujon Brothers on boat construction. That was my Bible for this whole thing. I learned a huge amount from that. The book is absolutely worth every penny, and every minute you spend reading it will pay back tenfold in time that you'll save, and just fabulous tips and tricks and ideas, ways of estimating your time and materials, just lots and lots and lots of really good ideas. Anyway, Goujon Brothers and boat construction is a really good way to go. So I've been using Goujon Brothers epoxy right up until this boat. So this particular boat, I'm now switching to the Moss epoxy, and the reason for that is I just got tired of dealing with the amine blush, which is one of the issues with the 5-to-1 type epoxies, is at least the West System one. The amine blush is like a waxy substance that comes to the surface very frequently, and as the epoxy cures, and then you've got to remove that before you sand it and that sort of thing, versus this epoxy really doesn't have that, or doesn't have it anywhere near the extent. So anyway, so I've been using this. I've got the low viscosity resin, which is the one I'm primarily using. It seems very close to the West System 105 resin. There's this flag resin, which is higher viscosity material, which is interesting for like doing joints and fillets and things like that. And then, as most epoxies do, that comes with fast hardener, slow hardener, and in this particular case, it comes with a medium hardener too, but you can basically you can mix the fast and slow hardeners with this, so you can adjust it to go as fast as you want it to go, essentially. Which is, again, something you can't do with the West System stuff. The two different hardeners in the West System epoxies are not compatible. I did want to sort of show this system I set up. So I just bought a couple of plastic bins at the hardware store, and these are just little food container things that happen to be divided so they fit nicely underneath, and the epoxy ends up in one and the hardener ends up in the other. I'm not sure if I'd reuse them or not, but it was cute. So, doing it like this, it keeps down the mess. It's easy to pick this up and move it around. And these pumps are pretty good. I think the West System pumps might be a little bit better, but those are 5-to-1. So these are the ones that are 2. So this epoxy is a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 parts of epoxy to 1 part of hardener. I do like there's a different kind of dispenser. I've got the West System dispenser that I really, really like over here. So you've got the the hardener and the resin in here. This is a 5-to-1 ratio, so the hardener containers are much smaller in relation to each other. And what's beautiful about this is that when you pull down this lever, there's 2 pistons in here and a couple of check valves that basically pull down the exact ratio 5-to-1 in this particular case. And then as the lever goes up, the ball valves, check valves close, and the epoxy comes out these 2 little spouts and into your container, and it's fabulous. You don't have to worry about forgetting to squirts and how much you've got of one or the other. You're going to get the exact ratio all the time. You can also do a partial pump, which is fabulous. Sometimes I want 3.5 squirts, and with the other pump system, with this system over here, you just have to do even numbers of squirts. So one of the tricks which helps a lot is to do 1 squirt of hardener and then 1 squirt of resin, and then back 1 squirt of hardener and 1 squirt of resin. If you try to do say 6 squirts of hardener and then switch to do 6 squirts of resin, and you lose track and lose count, you're in trouble. That you're not going to be able to count on that bunch of stuff, and you're going to end up chucking it. So just by going back and forth and back and forth, it's much more likely that you're going to get you're not going to flub up. Also, that gives time for particularly the resin pump to get back up, and you have to wait, make sure that it's come all the way back up again so that you get a full squirt, especially on this high viscosity stuff. That's really critical. It takes a long time. So I've got my shop at 65 degrees. I got a heat pump in here, which is fabulous. I don't like working in hot weather, so in the summertime the heat pump is really good, and it works great for heating the shop and keeps it a really good temperature for doing epoxy things like this. One of the things I should mention, so I'm getting this is the company that makes these dispensers is called Sticky Stuff Dispenser Company, and I am getting 2 of these with the 2-to-1 ratio that I'm going to be using for the other mass epoxy. The other thing that I did on this ages and ages ago, I think it's a trick in the Goujon Brothers book, but you basically put a little light bulb underneath. So this is a 25-watt bulb, and if you want, you can put a cardboard box over the top of the whole thing, and that'll keep your epoxy warm. So if you're working in a really cold shop, say it's 45, 50 degrees in your shop, and you want to keep the epoxy nice and warm, that's a really simple way to do it. Basically, incubator for chickens kind of idea, which you could certainly do with the other epoxy dispenser, but yeah, you just have to come up with something different to make sure your light bulb doesn't melt through the little plastic containers and that sort of thing. Anyway, I think this one probably is also adjustable for 2-to-1. This hardener slides back and forth, and there's another hole in the lever here, but I haven't played around with that. I still use this occasionally, so leaving that one the way it is, and just ordered a couple other ones. The other ones I'm getting have actually built-in heaters and going fancy this time. because it's really nice to have that set at the temperature I want it to be. Goujon Brothers, definitely recommend having a cabinet, and I think it's a fabulous idea. A cabinet, shelf, space, whatever, for all your stuff. So plastic containers, brushes, squeegees, little brushes, tongue depressors, all the spare light bulbs, all the stuff that you would need there. And then I've got down here larger quantities of various things, rubber gloves, and you can see the wood filler there. There's different kind of filler material there, tons of tongue depressors in here. So anyway, well stocked up, ready to go with whatever projects come in along. So back over here. So after you mix the epoxy up, so I usually give the epoxy about 150 strokes. So basically I dispense it into whatever container I'm using. My wife eats a lot of Stonyfield Farm yogurt, so those are good containers. This is an old ice cream container. This is just another little plastic cup. If you're using a polyethylene container, usually when the epoxy is hardened up, you can just give it a squeeze the next morning and the epoxy will pop out of there. So I give it 150 strokes, just mixing around. I mix it pretty vigorously. I don't really worry about getting little air bubbles in or anything like that. I've not really had much trouble unless it's very, very warm or very humid. Cloudiness in the epoxy doesn't seem to be a problem for me anyway. So I mix it fairly vigorously. Make sure you scrape the sides of the container. Mix all the little corners. I also, while I'm mixing, using tongue depressor or whatever like that, I'll also scrape the tongue depressor off on the container, because there's, some epoxy and hardener on here that I'm basically scraping off and then scraping around the sides and mixing it back in, that kind of thing. So I do that, or if I'm not counting, I'm basically just looking at my clock and watching the second hand go around. I do at least 1.5 minutes, sometimes 2 minutes on the clock. And that's how I'm keeping track of how much mixing I'm doing. So then I can add, either if I'm adding a filler, I might add the wood fiber stuff, or this is the last bit of the cotton fiber. It's like a microscopic amount. So I bought a 50-pound bag of cotton fiber back when I built that boat in the 1980s, and this is the last of it right here. So experimenting around with other filler things, the wood filler stuff and some other filler things that seem to work out fairly well. Chip brushes are great for spreading the epoxy around. Little glue brushes, or acid brushes as they're sometimes called, are great. Squeegees are really good for spreading the epoxy out, and or making sure you've got the right amount of the epoxy in your fiberglass cloth, so you can kind of press down and squish over it and push it out. I like these really flexible squeegees, because once the epoxy is cured on them, you can just flex this and generally it pops off. Versus there's these harder plastic ones. These look exactly like the old Goujon Brothers double-sided squeegee things, but these are really hard. And the epoxy just doesn't want to come off of them very easily. Comes off of these much more readily. If I can't get quite all of it off, I'll just run I got a bit of 150 grit paper. I'll rub the squeegee over that and up and down on the edge to make sure I've got a nice smooth clean edge, so that because you don't want to have any little bits of epoxy or anything stuck on this that are going to catch in your fiberglass cloth and pull it. Fiberglass wise, I've got so this is just a little sample of 6-ounce cloth. You can see my fingers through it, so you can see it's a fairly open weave. This is, I think, 12-ounce biaxial glass. So this cloth is basically woven the normal way, like you'd expect to see cloth woven. This is got the fibers running diagonally, so you can see a whole set of them running this way, and then the other side they're running the other way. This particular sample has got some chop strand on this side, which I find personally a little bit annoying, but it was a really good price, so I bought it. Let's see. So this is a piece of couple of pieces of Akume plywood, and I wetted them out with epoxy, and I put a little fillet in here. So I mixed up. So first you want to do, you really got to wet it out first. So you want to wet it out, including in the corner, and then mix up your. You can take like the leftover. As you get good at this, you'll realize like how much epoxy you need to do a certain thing. So get enough to wet it out, and then a little leftover bit. I add the filler to it and work that out. You're looking for like a applesauce to peanut butter consistency. This is like peanut buttery right here. It's not. You can see it's not really sagging or running. Depending on where you're putting it, you can have it be a little bit wetter than this, and you might get away with it. But I like it kind of like this because I don't want it sagging and running there. So let's see, there I had a little bit here. It's starting to get, I was going to show you, but it's starting to thicken up a little bit already. And it's hard to hold the camera and look at it at the same time, but essentially it's peanut buttery. It's getting a little heavier than peanut butter now. This is the low viscosity epoxy, but it's also thickening up a little bit. So right now it's probably about the consistency of honey, and you really, the low viscosity stuff's sort of halfway between honey and maple syrup, or essentially. So anyway, so I wet this out. I put the cove with the fibers or whatever I'm doing in here, and then this is the biaxial cloth. That's this stuff here. So I make sure that there's plenty of epoxy on the wood, because this particular stuff is really thick, and the epoxy's not gonna, if you just put it on one side, it may not go all the way through. So I put a bunch on the wood ahead of time, put that over the top, use the brush to just if I put it on with a big brush or whatever, I just run the brush down the cove to sort of smooth it out and press it in. Put some more epoxy over the top of that. And then this is the 6-ounce cloth I just wanted to show you. So here, because the weave because the cloth is so much thinner, and because the weave is so open, you really don't have to put epoxy on the wood first. You can just lay the cloth on dry, and then so in this area here I had some epoxy on there already and put the cloth over it. This here, the wood was dry, and then I also just removed the excess epoxy from this, because you don't want all this extra epoxy like you've got, like I've got here in this area. You can see there's a lot of it, and what will happen is the cloth will actually float up in the epoxy, and you won't get a nice smooth finish there. So what you're looking to do is actually, you're looking for something about like this. So you're putting the cloth down, put the epoxy on it, let it soak in, and then with the squeegee just wipe over it to remove excess stuff. You can easily take it off the edge of the squeegee, put it back in your container, add something, maybe add filler to it for the next bit of stuff you're doing, and just keep going. And then you can come back if you're looking for a smooth finish and something that looks really nice that people are going to see. Then you can obviously just put another layer on top. Give this a light sanding, put another layer on top of that, and it'll look fabulous. But you don't want to try to put a whole pile of it like that there, because it'll look all lumpy and not come out very well. I always try to have several projects all lined up to go. So I've got, whatever I'm working on the boat, I've sort of set up a whole pile of different things. so that as I finish one, I can just roll right to the next one. Because with everything that you're doing, there's always going to be a little bit of leftover epoxy, and if you can just take that little leftover bit before it starts to get too hard or too thick, and just go right into the next thing and keep moving along, you end up with a lot fewer leftover bits that go to waste. So, you know, set up a whole bunch of different things, get it all laid out, and then, you know, just start going through it. So lots of days, there's lots of setting up and prepping and sanding and laying things out, you know, cutting pieces of cloth to the right dimension, putting things together, clamping them in place, setting it all up, and then a whole bunch of stuff ensues after that. So I hope this has been helpful. I'm sorry it's been a little bit long, but hopefully for people who haven't done much of this, that'll be good. Oh yeah, I should also mention that scissors are really important. These are just a pair of regular scissors. These are really good for you know, cloth like this. They will go through this, but it's a little bit of a chore. These ones are really nice. These are Fiskar, and they've got like a titanium coating on it, but the real key thing is there's they're little serrated edges there, and this goes through stuff great. This goes right through Kevlar, no sweat. So really good, handy for doing heavier cloth work. All right, that's it. Thanks. Let me know if you like it. Thanks. Bye.